Module 1, leveraging your strengths. We have found that people with powerful personal brands concentrate more on their strengths than they do on their weaknesses. Now this makes perfect common sense, but what is interesting is how much time and energy we as business people spend on our weaknesses, when in fact when you spend a majority, I'm not saying ignore your strengths, but when you spend a majority of your time leveraging your strengths, there's definitely a tipping point around your personal brand. Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, people with powerful personal brands instinctively know this, and they spend most of their time in their strength zone. Richard Branson has a wonderful quote, and he says, "What you're bad at actually doesn't interest people and shouldn't interest you. However accomplished you become in life, the things you are bad at will always outnumber the things you're good at. So don't let your limits knock your self-confidence, put them to one side and push towards your strengths." Richard Branson is a wise man. Now this is the section of our workshop which often traumatizes people, and in fact we've even had people resign at exco level after this session because it actually is counterintuitive to a lot of what we learn at school, university and in the business environment. So let's start. Performance theory says that if you imagine this triangle as representing 100% of what you do, so on average, if we have to divide this up, 45% of what we do, other people could do the same as you, on average, and we are generalizing here. Another 45% of what you do, other people can do better than you. So what makes you unique is this space over here, your top 10%, your ideal performance zone. In sports, they call it the zone. It's called you're leveraging your strengths. But really, this is the work that you were born to do. And as soon as you discover that, there's definitely a promotion and a strength of your personal brand. Now, just let's backtrack a minute. I studied to be an accountant. If I'd stayed being an accountant, I always would have been operating in these two zones, because that is not the work that I was born to do. And what happens is in these two zones, you're very average. You are never remarkable. As soon as you have clarity, and that's why when people say to me, "Helen, what is the secret of personal branding?" I say to them, clarity, clarity, clarity. The more clear you are about what you bring to the party versus other people around you, that clarity immediately, people pick that up and they start to realize why, and what are some of the elements of your own powerful personal brand. And as soon as I realized about 15 years ago that my strengths were to stand up in front of people, hopefully train, inspire, and share knowledge and write, there was immediately a tipping point. So one of the first questions that I have to ask you is, do you know what your top 10% zone is? Because performance theory says that when you were between 11 and 14 years of age, your strengths were actually at their peak. So depending on what school system you were in South Africa, it's probably between about grade 4 and probably a grade 7. Now, if any of your parents kept your school reports from that age, it's a very interesting dipstick indicator to look at your school reports, because at that stage your strengths were naturally at their peak. And it's not so much about the subjects or the marks that you got, but what were the comments? So some comments that teachers wrote about me is, "She speaks a lot. She's quite bossy." And all of those, if I think of my own personal brand, those have translated into very much the person that I am today. And I believe bossiness gets stuff done. So if we have a look at this, now, if you didn't keep your school reports, that's okay. But I want you to just mentally go there with me. Imagine you probably about 12, 13 years of age. What did you like to do at that age? Were you a loner? Did you have a lot of friends? What were your hobbies? What did you like to do? Sports, culturals? What subjects did you especially like? Did you like the teacher or did you like the subject? So just do some kind of analysis of what you were like at that age. And think of you today. Is there a difference between that person at 12 or 13 and the person that you are today? Because often that gap represents strengths that we've actually left behind that are naturally part of us. And if you awaken those again, you'll be amazed what actually happens to your personal brand later on in life. I have twin daughters who are now 19. So when I was first aware of this theory, they were probably about 12 at school. So when I went to their parents' evenings, bearing this in mind, typically, when our children have 2 A's and 3 D's on a school report, our attention as parents goes immediately to the D's. When in actual fact, when I was exposed to strengths theory, I realized we actually needed to concentrate more on the A's because that's actually where they're going to make an impact in their career. So what I would ask the teachers is, where are they showing a natural predisposition? Where are their strengths naturally at? And the one is going the more math science route, and the other one was going the more English language route. So I know as a parent, all the money, time, and energy I'm going to invest in those children, I'm already going to start steering them in a direction to which I know they are naturally good at. Because we spend so much time and energy sending our children to places to try and develop their weaknesses. When a controversial theory is they should actually go for extra lessons to develop their A subjects. So it takes them from 80 to 90%, because that's actually the place where they're going to make the most impact later on in their lives. So this strengths theory has huge impact for you as a parent. So remember, concentrate on your children's A's and what they're good at versus, and I mean, obviously if they're failing, you're going to try and get them up to speed, because you know that's going to prevent them from concentrating on their sweet spot. But this has huge impact for you as a leader. Because what I realize is when we have natural strengths, we are attracted to people who have similar strengths. So when I interviewed, for example, for my assistant, I know some of my strengths is I'm a big picture thinker, I'm a typical entrepreneur, I'm not a good detail person, and I'm a natural extrovert. So I had to find someone who actually complemented my weaknesses. So when I interviewed the first 3 people, they were very much like me, so we immediately had chemistry. But what I realized is we were just going to be clones of each other within this company. And I did deliberately find the introvert, the detail-orientated person, and the finisher, whereas I'm the starter, because then we make a good team. And deliberately, when you recruit, I think to take strengths theory into account is a very and often I think anecdotally or unconsciously we actually do it already. But I want you to really focus on doing that, because what it does, it builds very robust teams. And lastly, and most importantly, this has huge impact for you as a networker. So I know what I'm good at, and I have a network of people who surround me who represent my weaknesses. So therefore, I can pick up the phone and leverage their strengths, because that's actually when the network works at its peak, is when everyone is focusing on their strengths and really outsourcing your weaknesses to other people in your network. So, vitally important, strengths theory applies to you as a parent, as a leader, and as a networker. Now let's get to the diagram that traumatizes people. Over here. So over here on the vertical axis is our ability axis. So here we have high ability, low ability. Vertical axis is enjoyment. Low enjoyment, high enjoyment. So we spend time in all 4 of these quadrants. So this one over here is probably one of the most important ones from a personal branding perspective. This is where we have high ability but low enjoyment. Over here is our career sweet spot, speaks to our top 10% from the previous diagram. This is where we enjoy something and we're good at doing it. And you would expect us all to spend the majority of our time here. In our experience, 80% of people that we train are in the trap zone versus the career sweet spot zone. And we'll chat about the reasons why now. And obviously quadrant 2 and quadrant 3, we spend less time here, very little time here, because we have low ability and we don't enjoy doing it. This is the place, this is where Malcolm Gladwell speaks about in his Outliers book, 10,000 hours. If you spend 10,000 hours practicing something, you get better at it. So if I, for example, wanted to be a better piano player, I'd practice because I have high enjoyment, but I don't have very good ability. And obviously I would get better. So Bill Gates famously was already coding when he was kind of 14, and that's why by the time he was probably 19, he'd already accumulated his 10,000 hours. So he was literally a step ahead of all of his other students at university, and that's why, and I think he's maintained that pretty much throughout his whole career. So let's take a little bit of a deep dive here. And how can this impact you from a personal branding perspective? So it seems obvious that this is the place that we should spend our time in. Why do we get caught in the trap zone? So when I put this question out to people, they say to me, money. I've got a golden handcuff, I'm earning a really good salary, yet I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. Family can be you may have a whole lot of dependents who are dependent on you, and so you get stuck there. You're actually an accountant, you want to be an architect, but unfortunately you've got bills to pay, you've got family responsibilities, and you feel that you can't move out of that. And also children, for example, I have a sister who studied to be an actress, and I know my parents sent her on 5 aptitude tests to try and get a different result, when in fact all 5 came up that she was destined to be an actress. And my parents obviously knew that there was a tough career choice. from a financial perspective, and they really tried to persuade her to do otherwise, but that was her career sweet spot. So this trap zone, people can prevent, it can help you stay in that money, family, commitments, and also your belief system. Because I have a brother who believes that you should work to earn money. And he believes that your money that you get from your work actually funds your life. So he does a lot of his enjoyment outside of work. Whereas I have a different belief system. I believe you spend 70 to 80% of your time at work, so you need to enjoy it. So your belief system can also be something that keeps you into this trap zone, that you actually don't deserve to enjoy your work. And the last thing that I find that helps people stay in that space is lack of clarity about quadrant 1. They are not clear as to what their strengths are. Because if you think about it, the whole work system is geared around our weaknesses. So you go for a performance appraisal, your boss gives you feedback about your development areas. And then what happens is you spend all your time, energy, and effort developing your weaknesses. And the problem with that logic is you end up with very strong weaknesses. And you are never going to develop a powerful personal brand working predominantly in your weakness space. Because that keeps you there, when in fact this is where your personal brand impact is going to be made. So I find that as soon as people have clarity about their strengths, they have clarity about what they bring to the party, as soon as this module is finished, there's going to be an assessment that you can fill out, that if you're unclear about your strengths, this will help you get some clarity. We believe, and we are big fans of Marcus Buckingham and the Gallup organization's work, Strengths Finder, Stand Out, and we'll give all those resources to you which you can leverage. And in your organization, if you have different assessments, Enneagrams, MBTIs, numerous different assessments, I strongly advise you to do them, because that will help you gain clarity about the space. Because you will find, and one of the biggest barometers that will help you move from your trap zone to your career sweet spot is your energy. So I would like to encourage you in the next week to almost do an energy audit on yourself. Every hour, every task that you do during the day, rate yourself. Is this a 9 out of 10 energy? Am I sparking on all cylinders? Or is this like a dragging my feet around kind of task? Because your energy is giving you messages the whole time, whether you're here or whether you're here. So for example, because of my accounting background, I used to have to do the books for this business. Now I used to procrastinate about it, I would put it off. Now that's immediately a red flag, because as soon as you procrastinate about something, then that generally means you probably are here or here. Because we don't procrastinate about things that we like. So that procrastination was the first red flag. Second red flag was when I did the task, and I could do it okay, but what would happen afterwards, I felt like there was a slow puncture. The energy was actually leaking out of me. And that immediately, I would have to actually go and have a nap afterwards because it was so exhausting. And that's how I know that I could do it, but I didn't enjoy doing it. And those are the two ticks that need to happen for you to know that something is in your career sweet spot. You've got to enjoy it, and you've got to have a natural ability. Having the ability is not enough, because that's what keeps you in the trap zone. One of the other things that we find when we've trained a lot of people, there's some people who are all-rounders. They're good at everything. And it's very hard for them to get their head around this theory, because they have made great successes in their career or in their life through being all-rounders. And my feedback to people like that is just, there are some things that you enjoy more than other things. And they're not all at an even level. And those 2 or 3 things that are slightly above the others, that's where. And once you distinguish what they are and build your career around those strengths, you'll find that even with you good all-rounders, there will be a tipping point from a personal branding perspective. Move out of your trap zone, move into your career sweet spot, because that is the work that you were destined to do. And that is where you're going to make the biggest impact from a personal branding perspective. We've now finished Module 1, Leverage Your Strengths. You've got some stuff to think about. Are you in your career sweet spot? Are you in your trap zone? Are you in the 10,000 hour space? Where exactly are you? Do you have clarity as to where you need to move? And something that will help you in that, we've set out a worksheet for you on leveraging your strengths. Complete it. Go and have a look at some of the Gallup Marcus Buckingham work. We're going to send you links to that too. Complete that, because that is going to form the basis for the next module, which is now that you've got your strengths, how do you package them? How do you take your personal brand out to market? And that's what we're going to be doing in Module 2. See you then.